for being here. I know it's tough to think about softball when it's 8 degrees outside and we got a little bit of snow on the ground and so forth, but we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're here for the first USA Softball of Michigan training session. This is, we decided to go with some elective courses this year to more or less help out our umpires, give them something to think about during the winter months and get them primed up for the season. As some of you had heard, the Metro Detroit UIC, John Jonason is on here also, and he has done some outstanding work for us in the past, and this year he has come up with a module with the new rules that he will be passing along to me, and I'm going to turn it over to you, John, to explain a little bit what you've done for these people to be looking forward to.
Well, you know, we've kind of gone to virtual training last year because of COVID, and we're going to be continuing that this year with updated modules. You know, we learned a lot last year. What I did was I took the rule changes for 2022 and put them in a presentation format. And then there's one section in there because now we're allowing a leap as opposed to dragging the back foot in fast pitch. There's a lot of coaches that don't know the difference between a leap and a crow hop and a replant. And to be honest with you, there's probably a lot of umpires that don't really understand what the difference is either. So I included a video that I had put together off of several things on YouTube. The videos aren't the best in the world, but you can see the difference, the physical difference between the crow hop and between the replant and between the leap. And then what you do at the end, you take that, you see all the rule changes, and at the end you fill in your name and your email address, and then there's a little survey at the end too. And Brian thought we should keep that on there for you guys. So you'll take a little survey, and then when you click on submit, it goes right to Brian. And you also get an email that tells you that you had taken the module, watched the module. And then there are other modules that we're developing on the different rules and so on. And we're working on base mechanics also that we can teach virtually. So that's about it.
Okay. Thanks, John. Like I said, there'll be more information to all you folks and to the rest of our umpires later on. As soon as I get the information, I'll be passing it out this weekend to all of our people. So the reason why you're here tonight is this session is basically pre-season to pre-game. The first thing that we've done to get ready for the upcoming year is that you've attended a meeting tonight, basically just to get the juices flowing again and so forth. It's been, it seems like it's a long time in between pitches, and we need to get back out there and get our minds going again and so forth. So one of the things that we need to do when we get ready for the preseason is, like I said, the first thing you've done is you've attended this session. But think about this: in a few short months or weeks for some of us, we will be going back on the field. And it's amazing how when we leave things in the closet over the time, that they don't seem to fit the same way that they did when we left the season last year. So check your uniforms out. Check to see also if they're all in working order, as far as the shirts are not missing a button, as far as your pants, you know, make sure that the hems are still in them and so forth. Also go back to your uniform in regards to things that are not used as much or we don't look at as much as far as when we're thinking about uniforms. And that would be like your ball bags. Are the ball bags cleaned and ready to go? Are they sewed properly so the hems are not coming out of them? Look at your caps. When was the last time you replaced the cap? When was the last time that it got cleaned up a little bit? Also, look at your belt. Is the spot that it's worn in places? Is it time to get a new belt? That may be another thing you want to look at. Check out your shoes. Was the last time you wore them last year? Was that the last game, which was raining and it was muddy, and now the shoes are all got dirt caked on them and so forth. So those are the things that we want to look at. Do the shoes still fit? Maybe they didn't fit right last year. Maybe you've worn them out a little bit. Or maybe you bought a pair of new shoes that you're going to try out. Wear them around the house a little bit before we get on the field. I tried out a new pair last night, and it wasn't too bad, but towards the end of the night, after an hour or so being on the field, they started to hurt a little bit, just from the standpoint of still getting them broke in. So that's what you want to look at. Do something to get yourself ready. Now, we can tell you that you need to go out and you exercise and so forth. Just walking around the block, or maybe walking around your office in there. Part of walking around on your lunch hours and so forth. Just getting your legs back in shape. Trying to get something in mind of building up the stamina from watching some TV during the winter and so forth. So some of us that would do basketball, we're in pretty good shape, but keep in mind that during the fast pitch season, a lot of our umpires are doing squats. So maybe work on getting behind the plate at home, doing about 25 squats on each side, 50 squats, and work your way up to where you're ready. So when the first pitch comes into, you're ready for it. Also look at, if you get a chance, especially for the fast pitch umpires, a lot of us are doing this already, but go out and try to find the local colleges or local schools that are working out, and see if you can go in there and just call balls and strikes to get yourself not only in a point that you're working on your plate mechanics, but just getting their timing down and seeing the pitches coming back at you. So those are some of the things to look at. Watch videos. Watch games that maybe are being played. Go on YouTube or go on to ESPN if they've got a ball game on. Watch those games just looking at the ball going into the plate and seeing and looking at your the screen and saying that's a ball, that's a strike before the umpire calls it or they make the announcement on it. Attend meetings, and this is just one of the things is like this is the first one that we're having for USA Softball Michigan. Next week in Midland, there's a clinic up there. Look around and see where there's other clinics that are being held or other meetings that are being held so you can get into those and pick up more information. Chat with other umpires. And by just doing that, it gets your mind going again about ball games. It gets your mind going around situational plays. It gets your mind going, just getting to be back on the field. So those are the things that we have to look at. Those are the biggest things that I look at as far as getting ready for the season. All of us have our own ways. If a lot of us, it started many years ago, it was basically when the first day of the season started, we walked out on the field and did what we were supposed to do. So these days, now that we're all getting a little bit older, we need that extra time to get those bones ready and muscles and everything else. So that's what we look at as far as starting the season. Now, when we get into the games itself and getting ready to go to the games, we want to start off with a good pregame conference. And before I go started with that, was there anybody that wanted to add to something here as far as getting ready for the season that they may do that's a little bit different than maybe some of the other people? Go ahead and raise your hand or chat, or actually raise your hand and Ross will let you unmute you and then you can chat if you would like. So. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the pregame conference. Part of what we looked at with this is we have a lot of umpires that when they show up to a ball game, especially if they're working with somebody they're not familiar with, they're not sure how to run a pregame with each other on what they're going to do on the field. Keep in mind that the third team on the field is the umpires. So if there's something happens on the field, it reflects back to not only the one umpire that was out of position or didn't make a call or whatever, it falls back to that whole crew. And so what we want to do is we want to be basically in a situation when our crew goes on the field that we're as strong as the other two teams that are on the field, if not better. So when you get together, and this starts basically when you find out your assignments. Now, a lot of times through Arbiter now, we know who our partners are. And a lot of times we've worked with that person, but there's no reason why when you get to a field that you can't talk to that person about, hey, the upcoming rules this year for the season. Granted, Keep in mind, for the fast pitch people, major rule change. We're going to allow the pitchers now for the JO game, the girls game, to leap. So if your partner is not aware of that, and they draw the first game on the bases and they start calling illegal pitches because the person is leaping, then we've got to discuss that. So keep that in mind. The other thing is keep in mind with the game of slow pitch this year. One of the new rules is that we have is that there's going to be a 5 seconds between pitches now that the pitcher has to throw the ball instead of 10. Now, we're going to discuss that more when you get into new rules in one of our other sessions. We'll discuss that more, but talk to each other about how we're going to handle that and go from there. You're also going to talk about umpire to umpire signals. This has gotten a little bit away because we more or less now, if we lose a count, we look in and we say, hey, what do you have for a count? But we have the infield fly signal. And just to get everybody back on the same page, what do we need to do with that? We need to let our partners know that we're in an infield fly situation. So that way, early in the season, we may forget about that and go from there. Look at the situations that you're running into as far as when you talk about this, what are we going to do in a timing situation where if we have a run come into the plate or a runner coming into the plate and we have 2 outs, and that could be a possibly 3rd out at another place on the diamond. Who's going to be watching the base or watching the plate and what's going to happen on these certain situations. So look at that when we do that. The other thing that we're looking at is equipment check. And this is basically, we're still checking bats at all levels. We still want to go back and check the bats. We want to check them to see if there's a rattle in there, if it's banged up, if they're cracking. We want to check that, even though the players will say, well, I've got this, it's got a sticker on it. It got approved by the league office yesterday. It's good. Well, that's true. But the thing is that it's good for that at that time, but there's still a possibility that there may be a rattle in it or so forth. And we need to check that out. Check as you go by the dugouts, check the helmets out. If you see one that's got a crack in it, then have them disperse of it. When we're in high school, for the people that are working high school ball, keep in mind that we have to look for the Noxkey seal on the back of the catcher's mask and the helmets too when we're looking at helmets. The other thing that we're going to talk about is plays that we can ask for help on your partners. How do we look at for a check swing when we give a check swing? And it used to be there was people that worked in other sports, baseball and so forth, that they had, if I come out with my mask still on, don't change my call. If I come out with my mask off, that means I need some help. So please, give me the right call. It's situations like that. We're going to look at pulled foots at first base. Keep in mind that when you discuss yourself with your partners over this call, is have the base umpire, even though they're not sure, they need to make a call. That way you've always got something to fall back onto if the plate umpire in a 2-umpire system missed it or whatever, didn't see it, then you've got at least a call. If the person doesn't make a call and points to the other umpire right away and says, what do you have? We have nothing now at this point, a call to fall back onto. So keep that in mind. And I'm sure that we've all had that happen at least 1 or 2 times in our careers with somebody we've worked with that we were unfamiliar with. Talk about the situation at the plate, especially if we're doing fast pitch. If we have a ball that comes down, hits the batter before they get out of the batter's box, or you see the ball hit the batter, what are we going to do? Are we going to call a dead ball? Are we going to wait for the plate umpire to call it? What are we going to do in those situations? Also, the situation may come up is anytime a coach comes out for help, wants you to go for help to your partner. Now, keep in mind that if you've got the right spot, you're in the right spot, you've seen everything, there's no missing pieces of the puzzle and so forth, then do you really need to go for help? You just tell the coach that I've seen everything. In my judgment, this is the call that we've got, and this is what we're going to go with. We have a lot of umpires out there that as soon as the coach comes out, they want to appease the coach. So they'll go in and they'll talk to their partner and say, what do you have? And then they'll come back and, well, my partner said that they have the same thing I have. So that's what we're going to go with. So basically that's what we want to do with that. Don't appease the coaches. Go out there, what you have, is what you have with your call. We're going to talk about who's going to take fair or foul balls. If you remember a few years ago, for some of us, this was only like a one year rule. We had a situation where the base umpire took all fair foul balls past the bag, no matter what. And then we went back to the plate umpire taking all fair foul balls. The plate umpire years ago would only take the fair foul ball up to the bases, and then after that, it was going to be the plate umpire, much like the base umpire, much like baseball. Make sure that you folks are on the same page with that. Talk about appeal plays. How are we going to treat appeal plays? We need to know who's going to have the situations. Missed base coverages, which basically is going to be goes back to what do we have with the lead runner? Whose responsibility is the lead runner? Who's going to have the trail runners, and so forth. Plate coverage at first on hits to the outfield. If you're working a 3-umpire system, this has been a great debate as far as a ball hit to a right field where the first base umpire goes out. Who's going to have that play at first base? By book, it says that the third base umpire will come over and take that play at first base. But there's a thing called deviation. If something happened where the plate umpire felt that the third base umpire couldn't get over there, deviate, communicate. One of the biggest things that we have in our game is that we can communicate with our partners by letting them know where we are. I had a talk today with Kevin Ryan, and he says that seems to be one of the things that we're missing in our game is a lack of communication. So he watched a game earlier this year that the people on the field had the plate umpire made 2 calls at second base in a 3-umpire system. And after the game, they told Kevin that they had decided that they were going to go out there and work the game without communication. They were not going to verbally communicate with each other. And then it basically blew up in their face. We're going to talk about who's going to have that play, that play at first base if there's obstruction or interference. We're going to talk about that. You're going to look at also in a 2-umpire system, if you have a double play ball, should the plate umpire have a chance to watch the interference at second base or possible interference? Yes, because at this point, the base umpire is turning their head going back to first base. So that's what they've got to look at with that type of information. If a base umpire goes out on fly balls, who's going to have the fly ball at that point? Are they going to go out and do they have the fair foul ball plus the catch or no catch? That's what you have to talk about, because there's situations where umpires in their minds think if they go out on the line, they're still going to let the base umpire take it. Especially if you're working with somebody that's fairly new, go over this information with them. Talk about fly ball tag up responsibilities with multiple runners. Who's going to have the tag, the lead runner? Who's going to have the tag on the remaining runners? So forth. Who's going to have the play back to this situation? So talk about that. Talk about also with your partner, the coverage of third base, especially if you're working a 2-umpire system. Who's going to have the play at third base with a single runner at first that goes into third? And is a base umpire going to take it? Is a plate umpire going to take it? Keep in mind that if a base umpire goes all the way to third, who's going to have that remaining runner on there? So get that straight between yourselves, so that way when the situation does arise, you'll know it. And as a plate umpire, thank you. As a plate umpire, maybe what we should look at is also communicate with your partners on that. We talk about this when we're in person about, have you worked with this person before? Do you know their tendencies? And even if they've worked together, you still want to communicate with that and let them know what's going on a broken down play. We're going to talk about leaving too soon on a pitch. Before, we're going to stop the play. We're going to call no pitch and then rule the outs. That's what we have to look at. And keep in mind that when you're working in the game, either game, when do we have that leaving too soon? Is it on the release of the pitch, or is it on when the ball crosses the front edge of the plate? So that's what we're going to look at. Illegal pitches and the coach's options. This is primarily more for the fast pitch people as far as what we have with that. And then we're going to review the responsibilities after the ball is dead. Who's going to watch the runners once the ball is returned to the circle and fast pitch, and when to switch off. Basically, what we look at in our game is that we can call timeout. Call timeout. You can go back to the plate. We have no other worries about what's going on. In the college game, and now has trickled down into our game and the high school game, is that we have people that will not call timeout. So they're constantly watching the pitcher or watching the other base runners and so forth. Why not just relax, give our chance to clear our heads as we're walking back to the plate and just basically call timeout? We have that option. All the plays stop, the ball's in the circle, we go from there. In slow pitch, keep in mind, don't call it too soon when we have timeout, because there's sometimes that the fielders will get the ball and they'll try to pick off the runner going back to first base or somewhere else. So keep that in mind. Read the play. Review our base umpire positions and any changes in coverage. This will get more talked about when we do one of our sessions on the 2-umpire system. We as a program across the state and across the Midwest, and I'm going to say even the country, have gone away from our basic 2-umpire system as far as where we should be stationed. I have seen people in a 2-umpire system in the game of fast pitch, instead of being just slightly off the right shoulder of the shortstop with a runner at third base, that they are basically 3 feet off the third base foul line, and that is their state. That is where they set up at. We have seen people that in a 2-umpire system in both games, slow and fast, that basically will sit and they'll be off the left shoulder of the second baseman, but closer to the off the right shoulder of the first baseman with a runner at first base. If they have a steal, they're going to be behind the runner no matter what we look at. So talk about that with your partners, especially if you get into a game situation in the first inning, you say, hey, wait a minute, keep in mind that we have a runner here and you have those responsibilities. We're also what we should do as far as when you have a pregame is you're going to want to talk about the tendencies of the teams. Do you have teams that like to, in the game of fast pitch coming up with the high school season and so forth, do you have a team that likes to bunt? Do you have a team that has speedsters that will be stealing bases every chance they get? What is their tendency? What has the coach looked at? Keeping that in mind, also when we get into our slow pitch season and even our summer season, we have to handle players and coaches at the adult level, even though some of them have not reached the adult level, even though their bodies say they are. Keep that in mind on what we're looking at with that. How are we going to handle that? If we have a situation, is the base umpire going to come in and help out the plate umpire? Is the plate umpire going to come out and help the base umpire? If we have an ejection, who's going to take care of, make sure that the player is removed from the field? Those are the things that we want to look at, and then make sure that you have help from your partner in that situation. In the game of basketball, when we usually give a technical, then at that point we get out of the way, and then the other partners come in and clean up that, make sure the coach is settled down, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to have a situation where the same official is giving the same coach or player another technical. So that's what we look at. Same thing with this. If we eject somebody and there's more problems, we as an umpire want to get out of the situation, let your partners clean up the mess. If you can, if it's a situation where let's face it, if you're by yourself in a 1-umpire system, which we have a lot of that, then you have to go from there. But if we have a 2-umpire system, let the other person come in and try to help you out and get things settled down and go from there. We don't want to have multiple ejections with one person. Deal with how we're going to get the coaches off the field if we need to, or how we're going to handle that part of it. The other thing we're going to look at is, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes, is the pregame conference that you're going to have with your partners, with the coaches. And one of the things that we're going to look at too is also when you go on the field, check with your partner, make sure they have everything. There's nothing worse than working a fast pitch game and you start walking out to the field or end up at the field and your plate umpire goes, where'd I put my mask? So those are the things you want to look at. Make sure that your partners have their indicators. So a lot of us, we carry one indicator on the field, so we can't really share with somebody. Make sure that they have their brushes and so forth, and they're ready to go. At this point, I'm going to open it up a little bit to see if there's any comments in regards to this or any questions. So go ahead, Ross, you can unmute or what we need to do and see if we have any comments.
Comment here from Dave.
Okay.
This is a great time to get your nose in the rule book. That's also pre-game. That's also, if you're doing high school ball, you should have gotten your rule book and case book just in the last day or so. And if you're not, and you've got your old rule book, and you want to maybe print up the new rule changes and put them in your old rule book so you have it, now's a good time to do that. But brush up on all the nuances that could happen. Like you were talking a little while ago about coverage, but what happens if something strange happens, and what do you do? The case book usually covers that. So get your nose in there, look at it, and be aware of situations, but you can't read enough on the rule book. That's it.
Okay. Any other comments as far as a pre-game information? Something else that I might have missed as far as sharing with your partners? Okay, now we're going to get into a situation where one of the things that we probably ought to talk about too is for the veteran umpires. Find out if you're working with somebody you're not familiar with, how many years of maybe they've been working, how many years experience do they have? Are they new to the game that you're working? Are they new to the area? Try to get some information from them in regards to that. Especially if they're a brand new umpire. Let's face it, you need to get them relaxed. You go on the field and talk to them about that. If you have another situation where maybe you show up and they don't have a powder blue shirt, or maybe they don't have a navy shirt, or maybe they don't have a jacket for that game. Especially some of our newer umpires may not have a situation and you have an extra one. Let them borrow maybe yours. Or we had a situation a few years back where the people showed up. The one umpire, all they had was a powder blue. The other one had a navy, and they wanted to wear navy. And they told the other umpire, basically, which was a inexperienced, fairly new umpire, that, well, I want to wear navy and it's too bad you don't have one. So we'll just go out on the field like this. If that's a situation, you as a veteran most likely have other uniforms with you. So match what your partner has. And remember that the default uniform in basically our games are the powder blue shirts with gray pants. So keep that in mind. And that's one of the things that we have to look at. If you're one of the people that newer umpire going into a situation where you're not working, have not worked too much, let your partners know that, hey, I'm not familiar with what I need to do. I'm fairly new. Can you help me out with this? So that's one of the things you want to look at with that also, is find out some experience with that. The other thing is especially early in the year, talk with your partners about something that you may want to work on. Say, for instance, you may be feeling that you're sitting up square on left-handed batters. What can I do differently with that? Keep an eye on that for me, will you? Or it may be a situation where you're working the game of slow pitch and you're trying to figure out, am I setting up too deep with runners on, and I'm not getting into the inside of the diamond as quick as I want to. Those are the things that we have to look at. So work with your partners, talk to them, and go from there. And then afterwards, when we get into the post-game stuff, review that and go from there. So now we're going to get into a situation where we've gone through our pregame with our umpire, our partner, and now we're going to move on to going out to the field. When you go to the game, go through the gate and onto the field, go on as a crew. No matter if it's 2 or 3 umpire system, go on as a crew. Go and check your equipment as a crew. We have some umpires that will sit there and go, well, I'll go check third base side, you check the first base side. So if we have a situation during the game that a bat comes in to play, and then the other team goes, well, your first base umpire let us use it, so they said it was okay. How come you're saying it's not okay? So that go together. So that way, if there's a question on a bat, both of you can answer the question at the same time. Go there. And then basically the other thing is, when you're doing your pregame, is don't spend a lot of time on one side as opposed to the other side. Do what you need to do, go over to the other side, do what you need to do, then find a neutral spot to chat if you want to chat. Or the other thing is, especially if you're working new in the season, is basically take a walk around the diamond, check to see if there's other holes in the diamond, check to see if there's a soft spot as you're walking, you found some a ground that basically has absorbed more water than the rest of the field or something, so it's a little soggy out there. Look for, like I said, the holes in the fences on the side fence. Look for the quirks in the field, especially if you haven't been there before. Talk about that. If you're working slow pitch, same thing. Let's face it, some of those city parks may not have been worked on as much as they would have liked to. So now you can go out and find that drain head that's still up, or the holes in the fences there. So now when you go to give ground rules to the coaches, you're familiar with that. You're familiar with the field, and you can tell them this is what the deal is, and here's how we're going to play it. When you get to the pregame, basically what we look at with this is that the plate umpire should stand at the point of the plate facing towards the infield, outfield, towards the field, basically. That's where the plate umpire should stand. The base umpires should stand at the top part of the batter's box facing towards the plate umpire. What I like to do is, as the coaches come in and we start the conversation, I like to take a step in so I can hear what the plate umpire is saying, especially if we have a newer umpire. Then at this point, when the coaches come out, introduce yourself to the coaches and introduce your partners to the coaches if you're the plate umpire. This way, everybody's on the same page. They know who each other is. And it may be a situation where everybody knows each other already. So you say, okay, fine, we're all here. But keep this in mind. If you're into a situation, if you have showed up to a field, and this has been brought to our attention by other things, you show up to the field and you know the home team. You've worked their games for a while. You go over there and talk with them. You find out how everybody's doing, so forth. And then you go over to the other team, and the coach says to you, he says, well, you've spent 15 minutes over there with that side. I hope you spend 15 minutes with us. So right away, that coach is already thinking, especially in the high school games, or maybe even a tournament situation where you've got a team that came in from out of town in the game of slow pitch outside of the area, and they see local umpires talking to local teams. So keep that in mind. Also, what we look at is that when you introduce yourself to the coaches, and this happened in a tournament I was involved with one time, the plate umpire came up, they called the home team in the home area there, which he happened to be from, called the coach by the first name and looked over to the other team with the coach that was not from that area, and more or less said, hello, coach. And that was it. Small talk, or no small talk, just hello. Basically, at that point, the coach for the visiting team and the team outside of the area had to feel like they were going to get homered that day. We don't want that. So basically, just call them by coach to start with. If you know both coaches and they're familiar with you and so forth, then yeah, you can use their first names if you feel comfortable. I usually go coach until later on in the game or something, and then we're on an individual basis. I may call them by their first name and so forth. Go over the lineup cards. Make sure that when you go over the lineup cards that you have, if we're doing fast pitch, we have, and this is during the high school season, that we have 9 batters, and if they're using a DP and flex, make sure we have a flex. This happened with one time when I was a base umpire, that the plate umpire took the lineup cards, basically shoved them in their ball bag, didn't even look at them. And then as we got ready to play, the coach says something about, well, I want to make sure I had the flex player listed on my lineup card. And sure enough, we didn't have that to start with. So we had to go back, and once again, it was the umpire's fault that they had that situation. If we're doing the games in JO this year, we have a new rule that they can have an extra player. So make sure we have that on there. If they have a DP, flex, and an extra player. If you're doing high school, same situation, we're looking for a DP and flex. When we get into slow pitch during the season, keep in mind we can have an extra player. So we go from there. The other thing is that it's not so much during the high school season and like that, but during the summer season, if they have 10 players listed, then let's make sure we have 10 players on the bench area or on the field ready to go. There's nothing worse than starting the game and then realizing that we had 10 players on the lineup card and only 9 players are there for the game of slow pitch. So we've gone over the lineup cards, we've gone over the ground rules, then ask the coaches basically, do you have any questions? And at that point, if they have a question in regards to ground rule or so forth, we can go from there. The last thing we should do in that situation after we've got all that taken care of, and especially if we're in a tournament situation where we need to flip a coin on the field, do the coin flip last. Part of it is that way what happens is that the teams, you'll keep their team's interest all the way through the pregame conversation instead of waiting. If you do the coin flip first, they're going to lose interest in what you're saying. They just want to get ready to play either offense or defense. After you get done with the coin flip, after you've got done with everything else, basically tell them have a good game and off we go and get ready to play. So that's basically what we're going to look at as far as that. Keep this in mind, you as veteran umpires, and we have a lot of them on this call, keep this in mind. If you're working with somebody fairly new and they have a situation where they've gone through and maybe didn't miss some, or maybe didn't cover something in the pregame, then cover that for them and go from there. During the high school season, we're going to be looking if we have to play, what are we going to do with, is it going to be a home and home series or what's it going to do? So that's what we have to look at. Any questions or comments that you have at this point in regards to this, what we've gone over tonight?
Hey, Brian, Gary has a comment.
Okay, yes.
I've got to be unmuted.
We can hear you, Gary.
Oh, okay. I was just making a point to make sure that you know who the coach is. A lot of times they send somebody else out there for the pregame, and then you get into a volatile situation and the person you're dealing with is not the person you dealt with at home plate.
That's a good point, because we do run into that situation from time to time that we'll have a situation come on the field and we're going to talk to the coach only, and the player that the person that thinks that they're the coach or is the coach comes out to talk to you and you go, sorry, you weren't at the pregame, we're not going to talk to you. So that's what you want to do and I think now we've got to a point where some of the teams have actually said that the person over there is the coach. They'll do all the things on the field and so forth. So, and we've had some situations where a person will come out and go, I'm the coach. If you have any problems with any of my players, come to me first. And our reply back to them is, well, we'll try, but there may be situations we won't get to you in time. So, so that's another situation, but that's a good point, Gary. Yes, we need to find out who the coaches are for sure. So the other thing is too, is that for the umpires that work on a situation where it's pay to play basically. So before they can play, they have to pay you. Make sure that we get the money before you start the game, because it's awful hard to get money as the game goes on or even after the game, especially if the team's lost. So try to get that. So if you have situations where you have to fill out score sheets at the end of the game and so forth, then that's another thing that you have to look at. We'll go into just basically a wrap up as far as post game. We talked about coming on the field together in a post game situation. Leave the field together. Also, you came on as a team. Leave as a team. Also, if you have a situation, especially if you're doing league ball during the spring and summer, if you've had a situation where maybe the team's been giving you a hard time on the first base side and that's the side you came on, then go out the third base side. Go away from them. Try to go through the winning team's dugout if you have to, especially during the league season. once you get done with your post game and everything's off the field, you've taken care of all the responsibilities, keep in mind that maybe your partner asked some things during at the pregame to keep an eye on for, make sure I'm doing this right, so forth. Then talk about that afterwards. Talk about things that you folks could have done better as a crew, or things that you needed to work on. If you're working with a fairly new umpire, then give them some pointers on different things that they can look at. But also keep in mind that we don't want to give them 10, 15 items, because now what's going to happen, we're going to discourage them and maybe lose them. Give them a few things to work on, keep it positive and so forth. There was a umpire years ago, actually not so long ago, 3-4 years ago, fairly new umpire trying to come up through the high school ranks. She worked with a person on Monday night. Everything went pretty well. On Tuesday night, she worked with a different umpire. The umpire basically ripped her apart, said she shouldn't even be on the field because she didn't know what she was doing and so forth. And basically we lost her. So instead of that, the veteran umpire talking to her, trying to work that umpire through situations where they could get better and so forth, we lost them instead. So unfortunately, that's what happens to some of our veteran umpires. They forget that they started out as rookies also. Basically at this point, Ross and I had decided that we were looking at about a 45-minute session, because what we wanted to do is if there was questions at the end or so forth, we would open it up to you folks and go from there. If there's no other questions, I'll let you guys, if there's questions, go ahead and unmute it for a minute, Ross, and see if there's any questions. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of things that we have upcoming. So
if you have a question or a comment, you can unmute yourself, and then feel free to ask that question.
okay. Next week. Go ahead. No question.
I was going to say, so before we go, we had just a couple of things before you wrap up, Brian. If you've not received the information from your district UIC informing you what the clinic format is this year and what is needed to qualify for member in good standing, for lack of a better term, please get with your district UIC and ask them for that information. They were supposed to have sent you an email with that information. If you don't have any luck with that, please let me know, and I will make sure to get that to you. If you've not put your name into the chat, please make sure you do that. I've got 31 participants on here, 2 of which their name is iPhone, and I'm not quite sure who that is. So if you can make sure to get your name in the chat, or if you want to, where your picture is, there's 3 little dots there. Click on those dots and then select rename, and you can rename your iPhone to whatever your name is, and we can pick up your attendance that way. Brian?
Ross, one other thing that I want to add to that also is it looks like if we have anybody here that is attending on behalf of the high school association that they belong to, please let us know. You can send me an email at bsmithump@att.net, and I will forward that on to your association secretary or whoever needs to have the information. I will forward that on that you attended this session. Also, if you are viewing this session on this taped version, you need to send me an email also to bsmithump@att.net, so that way we can verify that you were on this session and go from there. I think one of the iPhones, I think Ross, was Dan Smith. I think that was one of them. So next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, the 25th, we will have a session going over game management. Dave Shimp and myself will be running that session. Basically, we're going to go over, I'm not sure exactly what Dave has in mind, but one of the things that I'll be covering is not only game management with players and so forth, it's how we handle the game within a game. Basically, as far as what are we going to look at if we have a rainy condition, how are we going to take care of the game balls? How are we going to take care of coaches? How are we going to take care of the pitchers and catchers playing games as far as stepping out of the boxes, waiting for the batters and so forth. We're going to talk about handling games that way, game management. And then we also will talk about handling players and coaches and going from there. This seems to be a topic that we look at every year in regards to our state clinics that we have in person. And this year we're going to go from there. So without, if we have no other comments or questions, like I said, once again, if you're a high school umpire, to receive credit for your membership, good standing for your association, please send me an email and I will forward that on. And also, if you are reviewing this as far as a video and we're not on a live session, you need to send me an email also. So, okay, if we have,
Brian,
yes.
Robert Hicks has a question.
Okay, go ahead. Robert, good to hear from you.
Thank you, Brian. District 7 got rid of that dead weight this past year. So since they don't have a UIC at the moment, how would we get copies of those PDFs that you showed us during your presentation?
I can take that and I can forward that on to whoever would like it. And I can forward it on to one person over there in District 7, or I can forward it on to individuals, whatever you guys would like. I see that Steve is on here and is on there also and like that. So I can pass it on to you folks and then you can distribute it if you would like.
Thank you.
Yep. I will make sure I take care of that tonight then, Robert. I will send it on to you and Steve. How's that?
That's great.
Okay. Anybody else from, I'll send it on to you and Steve.
Brian,
Yes.
is it going to be the same link to get on next week's Zoom, same password and everything?
That I'm going to turn over to Ross. I don't believe we can use the same link because it's going to be a different night. So there'll be a new link going out. Most likely what I'll do is I'll send it out Sunday, 2 days before. I'll send it out Sunday and let everybody know, just a reminder. But that's about the time frame, Ross. So when we'll send it out.
That would be a correct statement.
Okay. Okay. Other than that, let's see, Jason.